Alright, so what I want to talk about today is the concept of liberalism overall as a sinking ship. Um, Essentially, the floorboards are rigged with dynamite, and we're dropping electronic cigarettes, making the ship's gonna blow from the top before it can even sink, and there's plenty of holes and cracks in the ship, and reasons why it can't essentially go forward. Um, and I'll get into that more. But what I really wanted to kick everything off with was this idea of the banality of evil that Arendt came up with after watching Adolf Eichmann's trial in 1961, where Adolf Eichmann was the keeper of the trains, and he would arrange and schedule all these different trains around the the German region during World War II. And during his trial, his essential argument was I was just keeping track of the times of the trains. I was just a simple man living a simple life with my family, going to work, and I was just keeping track of the times. I didn't do anything wrong. And this is what led to the concept of the banality of evil from Arendt and how these evils of the world can occur unconsciously, um, and how that is an example of how the evils of the Holocaust and the whole World War II occurred. It was in this unconscious aspect. People are just executing the structure within their civilization, um, and these bad things happen. And maybe he did consciously know, yeah, I am shipping these people off to work camps and death camps. Um, but again, in a sense, it was just something that was kind of turned away as I heard it being described as how when a fly's buzzing around you, you don't have the temptation not to kill it anymore. So some people might, but when a mosquito or something's buzzing around your skin and it's annoying you, you instinctually slap it to try and get it off. That discomfort that it's causing you, there's no veil within yourself that holds you back from doing that. And essentially, that is just what happened with other humans causing an annoyance or disturbance or being a part of this ubermensch ideology of attainment of, oh, we need to get another race, we need to get rid of another race to achieve these means, yada yada yada. What I want to break down the American banality of evil from is from the symbolization of a gas station. Um, how a gas station is not only a symbol of the metal being extracted out of the ground, all the cars going there, this relation to a work schedule, the toxic food that is exemplary of the normal food in supermarkets. It's all non-perishable, canned bullshit. All of it's horrible for you. And this gas station, I think, is a great example of the banality of evil under an environmental argument of American society, and how a lot of another example too is the toys that you find, these little cheap Chinese made things, and how there's this whole overarching banality of evil of extractive capitalism that most people interacting with the market understand at a general level. You hear the whole kids in China made your Nike shoes, and that whole rap. And I think that is a very pertinent but overlooked unconscious element of the evils that are unconsciously created through our means of consumer interaction. Um, and essentially now we're just keeping track of our watches. We're just keeping track of our times within the world and going into the set structure of capitalism and being going into economic determinism to find a viable strategy of creating our own luxuries and comfort. Most people aren't fundamentally interested with changing the whole structure of society and the world. That's a whole lot to undertake, and most people just want to find a little nest to roost in with with the golden eggs, as some would call it. And I want to use an analogy of the watches that we're looking into, as back in the day you had a self-winding watch where before you went to bed you would just shake it up a little bit, and through the movement of the day your time would be kept steady. And I think in a new way, smartphones are this self-winding watch of we're just checking the time and integrating into these electronic identities. And I think it goes into a much larger structure than just the electronics, and also the urban structure itself. When people talk about school shooters, where do the school shooters come from? They almost all exclusively come from suburban areas where you see this boxing off of the home, uh, in between other ones, this harsher separation from nature, and this residential and then commercial separation. And it really serves as an environment for the individual to gate himself away and enter into the ecstasy of online interaction. And that has its own consequences if left unchecked for someone with a misled mind or mental health issues. There's a whole host of problems that can come with this excessive internet use. And I'm just suggesting that our models of urban development have only contributed to these things even more. Just as the protests right now, I think a big influencer on the participation is everyone's been cooped up for so long, and we've even further integrated into this uh, one or two track minded political field of the social medias, where I've been seeing a lot of it as hive mind, um, a lot of the occurrences, and it is kind of sounding like an echo chamber in a sense. And I think that is something that is not currently thought about a lot within the historical field of if these if these unconscious evils of our actions, of this environmental abuse, this mental health issue um, being created, what can be the horrific outcomes? Obviously, it's not a good thought to manifest on, and it's something very difficult to even project on what could occur. But you see the evils of the 20th century and this almost this inside out form of the human and human's inner nature, especially with the power of technology and what that can accomplish, and what truly are the consequences of these banalities of evil, and our our luxury is just available down the street. The Taco Bell is just down the street, and you can get full for $1, and you can deck your whole home out in IKEA bullshit, and it's cool. And there is this structure that is stable, formed by this whole American nation state model. I've recently thought of it as a Mandelbrot set, um, just one particular region or group where you essentially have the same economic and pseudo political views being reflected off of these mirrors in each city. These cities all maintain around the same structure of having an urban, middle, suburban outreach. And then you also see things, one of Land's ideas on donut hole development, where in the inner cities, basically, you see the minorities move into the middle, and the demographics and safety going down in terms of whiteness demographic wise, and it forms this donut style development, the inner city schools, and all that. And that is just another expression of the consequences of our urban development. But it does provide a stable structure and makes it somewhat simple for an individual to lift themselves out of poverty if that is what is fundamentally being pursued as the main thing. Um, But that brings me to another point. This is definitely just a big ramble on our current times. Uh, but I wanted to talk about racial identity and this moving out of poverty. This whole of what the big wolves are able to go out and hunt and get and able to profit off of from the minds of the masses, especially electronically now, um, and through these mega places like Amazon. We want, not we, but people want a redistribution of these goods, especially to minorities, as reparations for cultural destruction that has occurred in the past. And I wanted to call in to this a little bit, the ideology of Fanon and black skin, white masks, and how the first analogy he really uses in that book is when the uh, when North America was just getting established, or the New World, when the Anglo Saxons came over, the Native American identity was created through the identity of the white man or the European man. And they were to perform within the system and set structure that the Euroman had, just due to the the pervasiveness of the new technology and the actual power that had been uh, attained. And so this whole idea of reparations and what is a fundamental goal of giving out this money is, I'm kind of taking one of the rabbits out of one of my old professor's hats, but it is the integration into a white form of capitalism and this further American liberalism, this model of the world that can be applied anywhere, with this supporting of, as I talked previously in my video, the landlord class, the mega corporations. I see people lately have been talking about, oh, you don't have a job, don't have enough money to donate, watch these YouTube videos with ad block off, and you're creating ad revenue for these black owned businesses. And this, I think, is another perfect example of the paradox that I see a lot of the time, is this whole ad revenue from these videos, most of it's going to the corporations and giving their platforms that things are advertised on exposure. A lot of it's black musical artists, and it goes to Spotify or Apple Music. And all of these things are corporate. There's all these corporate advertisements that use this progressive guise as a means of advertising. And this whole system that I'm building up is that people are trying to integrate into this evil, white, patriarchal culture, but also cosplaying as something opposite of that. But at the end of the day, with their consumer habits and what they actually want to get out of this world and civilization, is to not radically redistribute all the wealth and decolonialize everything. They want to attain the amounts of wealth that people before them, maybe their ancestors or people they look up to, the Hollywood people, what they have attained. And so there is this economic determinism track that is being critiqued as money is not the most important thing. Symbiosis with the environment is, and we need to change our urban models and the ways we interact with our houses and our environment to support that. But there is also a difficulty with living symbiotically with this population that we have. And so I think it paints a very difficult picture to grasp for me of modern identity found within this electronic world, especially for this minority population, where this culture that is being, the drums are being beat, these war drums to be integrated into inherently, is a sinking ship. And I want to get into this idea of the sinking ship more based on in an analogy I made from the Bible and Cain killing Abel on the field as this agricultural ritual of you shed blood on the field. Maybe it hadn't rained in weeks in these old ancient times, and uh, Cain killed Abel to water the plants. This whole greater analogy of slaying another, the exteriorization of inner nature and evil to get a one step up to win. And when you look at the start of America, a lot of it was economically aided by slavery and the means by which the whole textile industry was able to be luxuried and commodified by the slave class. And then eventually we had machines to do that work. Um, and so you didn't need people and you didn't need to enslave as many as much, which is a model I'm seeing now where it's not all as it's not like slave labor is as prevalent as it was in, let's say, like the 90s in China. Things have gotten better and they've been using more laws. But by with the original means that we were able to attain this amount of surplus and luxury was only with blood on our hands and the domination and exploitation of other humans directly. And so is this lifestyle that we're still currently living tinged with this original sense of sin that I portrayed earlier. Um, and that might have been a little harder to follow. I can link the paper I wrote on that, but a way I want to relate this whole dichotomy of trains of thought going around right now is in the bottom left in the screen I put in just an old kind of Greek classical architecture model, which if you go into Washington D.C. you see this same throwback, something called the Beaux Art form, and it was really popular in the 20th century, or repopularized of bringing back ancient Roman and Greek uh, forms of architecture, throwing back to their ideas of the Platonic and Aristotelian models of the world as a form of bringing structure, embracing the Western tradition, embracing the form that it has had. And then when you look at modern buildings and you think of this modern, there is this complete exiting away from this classical Beaux Art style. And it almost begs for a new look at things, a new use of building technology, either using recycled or natural materials at all times. There is this radical differentiation, and I find architecture as the base for a lot of ideologies and the way that we interact with the world because it's what we are housed within and it affects how the markets are interacted with, what people we interact with. And so this dichotomy of classical Beaux Art architecture to this modern architecture almost begs for a reconstruction of the new world in a different way because our current methods are not necessarily working. When I analogized Cain and Abel to this original Western sin of using slavery to achieve the surplus of capitalism that's now able to be gotten through machine, I I'm trying to think how to really phrase this. That whole complex that I'm pointing to, I think brings such a big finger to, are humans, and this is a very much bigger future heady question, are humans meant to live in symbiosis with the earth fundamentally? Is that something achievable under our current conditions? It might be more achievable, but with the state of how identity is being maintained through electronics, how could a radical change be brought about to this urban structure and the way that we spend our time within technology to actually uh, change us and turn us away from this banality of evil and this capitalist noose, as some would call it. Because I think one of the best examples of Marx's capital as being vampiric is simply just the Google AdSense algorithms between Google and Amazon, and how you purchase one thing and then they have ideas of, oh, how will we be able to make them buy more? We'll advertise this product with the same keywords and genres and elements. And there's this whole vampiric sense of personal data being used to manipulate you online to purchase certain things. And this is also prevalent through social media marketing, um, and these hierarchies that are maintained. I saw it in my high school based on the brands that kids wore. It would create a certain level of coolness, and these were supported by social media and whatnot. And so I'm really just babbling about the whole electronic hierarchy and how it's produced and how it creates us in this consumer world and molds us, is turning into this like inescapable trap where people are now being edgy and being slacktivists and being against the system while being wholly integrated within it. And it is just this large costume. Um, and yeah, that is mainly what I wanted to talk about. I definitely moved through a lot of those different topics, more than I classified them. I had a much more formal model of this video that I wanted to go into. Um, but I think I achieved in painting my conflicting headspace around modernity and these questions like symbiosis or the urban model, and can we actually change and redirect? I think we can, but I don't think ethical imperative, this moral structure, is necessarily enough anymore. I think there probably needs to be a much larger change, or like waking up of the masses, but that is also its own uh, little fever dream. So if you guys made it this far, thank you for watching. Feel free to shoot me an email, contact me on Discord in the comments. I'd really like to dialogue about a lot of these thoughts because I haven't exteriorized them to the extent that I can, because I don't have a whole lot of places that they will fit into with conversation or other people who are receptive of it. So thank you.